Hi friends, welcome to episode number 7 of our procurement and sourcing series. In this episode, we will continue to explore about the capabilities within RFQ related to asking and answering questions. With that note, let's quickly jump into today's topic.
Let's start off the topic. Already we discussed two episodes regarding the capabilities about RFQ and the processes. Now we will be discussing about how to ask questions and answer to those questions related to vendors and clarify those and collaborate with them using the out-of-the-box capabilities of Dynamics 365 F&O. So first of all, we'll quickly understand what is about creating and publishing questionnaires. Creating and publishing questionnaires is all about asking the relevant questions to the vendors, which will be primarily a one-way communication in which you ask the questions to them with the predefined answers in some cases, or it can be a multiple choice question, or it can be an open text table where you are asking the vendors to fill in appropriate details. And another option is allowing the vendors to ask questions, where it is a two-way communication. We are allowing the vendors to ask appropriate or relevant questions related to the RFQ which you floated, and you are replying back or responding back to those questions based on which you can select and decide the appropriate vendors to award the bid. Right. So first part of the video, we will try to understand how to create questionnaires and publish it. That will be a one-way communication. In the second part of the video, we will try to understand how to allow the vendors to ask questions and we can respond to those questions and record accordingly the respective responses. So let's quickly get back to D365 screen. So first of all, for creating a questionnaire, all you have to do is, which is not within the procurement and sourcing module, but you have to navigate to a module called questionnaire. So within questionnaire, first of all, you need to create some questions which are related to vendor evaluation. So click on questions, and I'm not sure what are these questions are all about. Let's quickly create a new question like 77. The type can be any of the vendor evaluation, or generally we can select a vendor evaluation, but the type you can decide your own terminology which you want to use. So since the vendor evaluation is already there, let me select vendor evaluation, but anytime you can quickly go and create a type whichever you want. If you want like RFQ evaluation, create a type as RFQ evaluation, that's absolutely fine. And then the input type can be text or it can be integer. So that's where I told you you can decide on what is the option you want, and based on which you can provide the appropriate responses. So let me keep it as text, and I just want to ask a question like, what is the lead time for delivery? So this is the first question which I want to ask, and the question is 77. And let me save this. Like this, you can create multiple questions, and then you can get appropriate responses from the vendor. Let's say next one, let me select it can be a checkbox, and it can actually group it. Let me select the view details to show it to you. See if you can group it based on the responses: always, never, yes, no. Probably I will select yes, no, but let me select over here yes, no, not applicable. Okay. And the question is, um, do you provide delivery to India? Delivery to India. To provide delivery to India. So that's a second question. Or maybe I'll add one more question, which can be like a checkbox. So here also, I just want to provide always or never. Um, what is um, what is always or never? Let me provide a question like, you can provide your own questions. So I'm just thinking on what kind of question I can provide over here. The product meets the ISO standards, always or never. So let me select the type, also vendor evaluation, and the checkbox is fine. Let me save this. So I have just created three questions Let me refresh this page. Then let me yeah. Okay, there is one more question already in the system, but I created a question number 77 where we are asking what is the lead time for delivery. That is a question number 78 where we are asking, do you provide delivery to India? And then also there is a third question, the product meets the ISO standard or not. So okay, so with this, let me save these questions. Let me now go back. Now we have created the questions. Now we need to create a questionnaire using these questions. So we have created the individual questions. Now we need to kind of group it together to create a questionnaire out of it. So let me click on new. So I'm not going to each and every aspect of the fields, because feel free to play around these particular forms, because some of these are self-explanatory, because the whole idea is how to use these questionnaires and get the appropriate responses from the vendors in the RFQ. So let me give it as RFQ questionnaire. Let me copy the same over here, and then the type of questionnaire, it's basically the same. So we want to evaluate the vendor, so I'm just selecting the vendor evaluation. And if you want to provide any introductory messages like please make sure to complete the attached questionnaire, right? So yes, Swift message something which makes relevant to the vendor, so whenever they open the form they can view this. So to give a quick introduction, you can also type a quick introduction, or you can also, if you want, you can add an image, so that makes more relevant for the vendors. And also make sure that you enable the appropriate buttons over here. Probably maybe sounds to you like may not be what exactly all these all about, but as we get into RFQ, probably you will be able to relate this. Let me enable these buttons, so that these radio buttons will help me to get the appropriate responses and save those responses. So generally you can also make sure that you enable those toggles based on your business specific requirements, right? So let me save this. So after saving a questionnaire, so we just created the questionnaire, but we have not added the questions which we created to this questionnaire. So now what we need to do is, on the top, just click on the questions, and then here you need to add those questions into this questionnaire. So the questionnaire which we created is 77. Let me save it, and let me make this as mandatory. Save this. Let me also click on new. Let me select the question number 78. Let me also make this as mandatory. We save this, and you can also see the sequence is also getting added based on which the vendor will be answering those questions, right? So let me add the last question 79. Let me also make this as mandatory. So by this way you have actually created the questions and also added those questions to the questionnaire RFQ question, right? So now what we need to do is we need to assign this particular questionnaire in the RFQ which we are creating, right? Let me make this as active. Let me save this. Then let me go back. Let me copy this questionnaire also, RFQ question. Then let me go back to procurement and sourcing module. Let me quickly create a request for quote, and I'll just quickly create this request for quote. I'm not touching upon how to create this because we already discussed a lot about this in the last two episodes. Please do make sure that you check out the previous episode number 5 and 6 before coming to episode number 7. So let me quickly add the item number, then the quantity is 1. I'm expecting it maybe $120. Save it. Header, the header section, I need to add the vendor. While adding the vendor, if you see here, let me add any vendor. While adding the vendor, I need to make sure that I also add the questionnaire. So once you click on add, then system will populate all the questionnaires which are already available in the system. Right now we added the questionnaire RFQ yes. So let me add it to the right section where we can have the selected items. You can have multiple questionnaire also, which is completely fine. And then let me click on OK. So this is going to add the questionnaire which we created along with the questions. So you can also view the questions over here, which takes us back to the same form. You can also view the questions. Then if you want, you can view and you can go back. And then now we are sending the RFQ along with this questionnaire to the vendor, so that will be able to make informed decisions whenever we want to award or reject any particular bid. So now this RFQ is getting processed along with the questionnaire. Now let me go back. So let me refresh this page. So 79 is the request for quote which we created. Now if I go to manage replies, now if I try to edit the RFQ along with the questionnaire, then I will be able to update the answers for those questionnaires also. So after other than that, updating the unit price, let's say I'm willing to provide it at unit price of $115. At the same time, I'm also asking the vendor to update the questionnaire, right? So let me click on complete questionnaire. Before to that, let me also tell you one more thing. Yeah, I think we'll take it up in the next sec where you need to provide vendor can ask questions, right? That's what we were discussing. So, but right now you can see the asking and answering questions on the top is disabled. We need to enable it. But right now, let's come back to the same topic. Complete questionnaire. Let me click on complete questionnaire. So first of all, the question asked is what is the lead time for delivery? Let's say it's 10 days. On the below, you can see this is why I have enabled those toggles to get the overview, or if I am also allowing the vendor to add any comment if it is relevant. And I can also go for forward or back button. Otherwise, if I have not enabled, then the user will not be able to come back. And then do you provide delivery to India? Yes. And then let me go forward, and then the product meets the ISO standard. Always, never, always. That's fantastic. So I get a good confidence about the product that it always meets the standard. It gets delivered to India within 10 days. So that is something fantastic. So whatever the queries which I have in my mind, I get all those responses through this questionnaire. I can also view the answers at any point in time, and then let me go back and then submit the request for quote. Now this request for quote goes along with the queries which the buying legal entity has, and then the vendor provided appropriate responses to those questions, right? So now in the manage replies section, if I go to header, I can view the questionnaire and along with the answers. So I can view the answers so that based on the answers, like we discussed in the previous episode regarding the scoring method, I can provide appropriate scores to the vendors. So I think now as you watch the complete video, you will be able to connect the dots. Then you will be able to understand why we discussed with the RFQ process, statuses, bid and scoring process. Now we are discussing about RFQ, questionnaire and answers, right? So now with of these questionnaires and answers, I have made a one-way communication, but it's not a two-way communication, I would say, because I am able to ask questions to the vendors, but the vendor is not able to ask some relevant questions regarding to this RFQ, right? So that's what we are going to see in the second part of the video. First, we need to understand about these two functionalities in D365 RFQ, as far as RFQ is concerned. So allow vendor RFQs enables or disables vendor questions for RFQ cases. You must set this to yes to use the feature and allow vendors to ask questions. So until unless you enable this parameter, you will not be able to allow the vendors to ask questions which are relevant to that particular RFQ. And at the same time, there is another option called default direct responses. When you reply to a question, you can choose to reply to all vendors who received the RFQ. So, or you can also choose to reply only to a specific vendor, or you can also make this as a group reply or a group answer to all the vendors to whom you have actually floated the or request for quote, right? So this is what we are going to see as part of the second part of this video. So let me quickly jump into D365 screen. So here, let me quickly create a request for quote. So in this case, now what we are going to do is we will be quickly creating a request for quote, and then in that request for quote, we will be allowing the vendor to ask questions. But first of all, let me check the parameter. I'm not sure whether I have enabled it. You have to go to setup procurement and sourcing parameters. In the procurement and sourcing parameters, if you go to request for quotation, there is a section called vendor question options. You need to make sure that allow vendor questions is enabled, otherwise you will not be able to enable it in the RFQ. And this is the second option which we discussed, whether default direct responses can be enabled or not. At any point in time, you can decide whether the sourcing managers want to float the group want to group the answers and questions and float it across all the vendors. So in those cases, you need to enable this. Just make sure that the toggle is enabled. Now I'm sure that the toggle is enabled. Let me go back to the RFQ. Let me quickly create an RFQ. So purchase, let it be purchase order. I'll just create a warehouse 12, click on OK. Let me add an item number. So now in this case, now I'm going to allow the vendors to ask appropriate questions regarding the procurement of Surface Pro 128 GB. So let me keep the quantity as maybe 100. Then my expected unit price is let's say it's $82 or can be anything. Yeah, let me save this. Let me hit the header, and then in the header let me add one vendor for ease of discussion. Let me add one vendor. Then let me save it. Now what I will do is I will also allow the vendors to ask questions. So since I have enabled in the parameter, now I'll be able to allow the vendor to ask questions. So if I disable this, if you can see here under the reply section, the question and answer option will be enabled. So let me enable this. So once I enable, you can see the question and answer option under the reply section is automatically enabled. If I disable this, you can see that the option for asking and answering questions is disabled. So let me enable this, and you can also keep a cutoff date until when the vendors can ask, and you can reply to those questions and provide appropriate answers. You can have a cutoff date if you want. Let me save this, but make sure that you enable this toggle before before sending the RFQs. Otherwise vendors will not be able to send questions, and you will not be able to answer those. So since I have enabled it, let me save this RFQ and let me float this RFQ to the vendor Acme Office Supplies. So now this request for quote is getting processed along with the option allow vendors to ask questions. So vendors will be able to ask appropriate questions related to this particular request for quote, right? So now let me go to manage replies. So now as a purchaser, I'm going to I got some few questions from them. This can be done from the vendor collaboration portal also. Right now I'm just doing it in the within the RFQ screen, where let's say if I click on edit RFQ reply, and let me refresh this page. And on the top you can see now we have the option called questions and answers. Previously on the top of the action page we never had this option. Now the vendors will be able to ask and ask and get appropriate answers from the buying legal entity. So now let me click on ask questions. So on the top you can see ask a question option is enabled. Now I can click on the plus icon. Now I can ask a question like what is the expected volume after 6 months. So this is a question which I have before providing the price. I just want to know what is the expected volume after 6 months. Let me submit this. Then I also have another question. Let's say who is the point of contact. See, it can be anything. You whatever the queries that the vendors have, they can ask it over here. So what the good thing to note here is the question is also recorded along with the timestamp, so you know when the questions are getting recorded, and you will also be able to provide answers for the same. So you can save this. Now when I submit the request for quote, I'm also asking few queries to the buying legal entity. And so now already the unit price is there. Let me submit this. Then click on OK. So now this request for quote is submitted along with few questions which the vendor has, and now it comes to the buying legal entity. If we go back, if we click on the question and answers on the top, we can view the same page actually opens up, but here in this page we will be able to provide the answers. Let's say the expected volume for the next 6 months is maybe 600 quantities of Surface Pro. Then who is the point of contact? Let me put my own name, Sri Ram. So is the point of contact. Let We need to save it, but make sure that you select all the questions before clicking on send answer, because let me also show you. Now I have just selected only the second question. If I click on the send answers, then sometimes the sourcing manager think that all the replies have been made, but actually not, because we have actually replied only to the second question. You can see the answer received is only for the second question but not for all the questions. So you need to always make sure that select all the questions by using the toggle on the top, and then you have to reply, and then you have to send the answers to the I think this should be enabled, but the send answers is not. Let me save it, go back and try again. Yeah, This is the answer we have provided. Select the other one also. Ideally, it should allow us to send answers, but this time system is not allowing us to send answers. But let me check, edit the answers. Um, because make sure that you select the whole idea is you need to select the appropriate questions, and ideal system should allow us to multi-select and send the answer, but I can see it as the answer has updated only for this. So let me choose to revert the answer. Let's see how the system behaves. Revert the answer. Okay, the answer gets reverted. Now if I select, the both options are getting disabled. Okay, yeah, now I understood that. That's because it's direct responses. Yes, okay, now I understood. uh, Let me select this. This case it is a direct response. Let me disable this, and then I think now it should be, we should be able to do it. Let me disable it for this, because this answer is already sent. That is the reason we are unable to remove the direct response. Let's try this again. Okay, your answer was sent. Now let me click on send answer. Okay, this answer is also received. Fine. Let me go back, and then let me go back to manage replies. And once again, what I will do is I will again ask for few more questions. Let me go to edit RFQ, and then so request for quotation return is processing because we have few more questions. Um, so vendor now sees the responses. Now let the vendor add a couple of more questions over here. We expect the volume to be more than 1,000. So that's the expectation which vendor has. And you can see the third question is captured in the chronological order, so that at any point in time you will be aware of what is the order in which the questions have been asked. Then let me remove the direct response. Then let me save it. Let me ask a question again. Then we need to deliver, sorry, we can deliver through air mode for better lead time. We can deliver through air mode for better lead time. That's fine. That's another question which we are submitting. Then let me disable the direct response, save it. Let me go back. Now let me again, once again, we are again submitting the RFQ. So every time when you ask any questions, you need to make sure that you submit the RFQ, so that when it gets notified to the sourcing managers. So let me go back. So now for the RFQ page, RFQ request for quotation case page, I can view the replies. Now let me select these two, and so I think system is allowing us not to multi-select. I think if I multi-select, then the send answers option is disabled. But let me try this out now. So now in this case, if I enable direct responses, let me enable it for here also. Let's say, let me give an answer like we expect the volume to be more than 1,000. No. Then this is yes, right? So the system is not allowing us, irrespective of the direct response, because direct responses basically will be used in terms of asking group questions, which floats questions and answers to multiple vendors. So in this case, system is not allowing us to multi-select, but so system is basically making sure the sourcing manager is aware of the each and every questions, and then we need to appropriately send the answers for the same. That's completely fine. But I would say this functionality as a overall is a platform. It provides us to have this to and fro communication, but it is not like the way we do the messaging in our Microsoft Teams or in maybe in WhatsApp. That's not the how the communication it is. If you feel that this has to be improvised, please make sure that you put your ideas in the ideas portal of Microsoft Dynamics 365 F&O. I think in that way we can start improving our product. So even I feel that this is an area which need to be improvised. So this is how you can send and get the responses from the vendors, and you can also publish this. And then also the good part about this thing is it gets registered along with the timestamps. So you will in the system within RFQ, the out of the box capability helps you to ask appropriate questions related to any of the RFQs and get the replies, so that you will be able to make informed decisions. Provide the scoring based on those. If you have any clarities, you can provide the scoring also based on the same, right? So that's the whole idea about asking the question, allowing the vendors to ask questions. So in the first part of the video, we saw how to create a questionnaires where it's a kind of one-way communication for asking the relevant information from the vendor. I would say it's a kind of a functionality which is related to request for information, RFI. And also in the another second part of the video, we saw how we can allow the vendors to ask questions and we can respond to them with appropriate answers. So please do try this out in as well when you are working out with the demo data. So overall, as far as the last three episodes related to RFQ, we have completed about creating the RFQ, creating the RFQ and converting it to PR, PO, PA, highest and the lowest status, process flow areas, and then we also talked about creation and solicitation types and scoring methods, how to compare and evaluate vendor replies, and also we talked about allow and alternate lines on responses. And in this episode number 3, we also talked about how to create questionnaires and allow the vendors to ask questions and respond back to those questions with the answers, so that we can take informed decisions. So that's it for today's episode. In the next episode, episode number 8, we will be starting off with purchase agreements, capabilities, and Dynamics 365 F&O. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel or D365 Talks, or you can also follow my profile in LinkedIn, Sriram Sivashankaran.
So thanks for watching this video. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you soon in the next episode regarding purchase agreement. Until then, Sri Ram Sivashankaran signing off.